Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be showing you how to find the correlation coefficient with your calculator. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is anytime you need to find the correlation coefficient, you are working with scatter plots. So you're always given some data points that you want to enter into the calculator. So I went ahead and did that ahead of time already. So to enter the data points, you go to Stat, you go to number 1, Edit, and on L1 I typed in my X values, and on L2 I typed in my Y values. Okay, now if you go to the graph, you will not be able to see your scatter plot unless you turn on your scatter plot. So I already did that ahead of time as well. To turn on your scatter plot, you're going to go to Stat Plot. It's right above Y is equal to. Since it's in blue, you go to second Y is equal to. Okay, you select number 1. And notice how it's already on. Normally it's on off. So you just make sure that it's on, that on is highlighted. You push enter. And our scatter plot is now on. Once our scatter plot is on, when you go to the graph, you will be able to see your data points. Okay, so notice how when you look at this graph, you can tell that the data points are increasing. As your X values get bigger and bigger and bigger, your Y values also increase. So you can obviously see that there's a positive correlation with this scatter plot. So in order to find the correlation coefficient tells you two things about the scatter plot. It tells you what type of correlation it has, whether it's positive or negative. And in this case, it should end up being a positive number because our data points are increasing. Aside from a positive or a negative correlation, it also tells you how strong the correlation is. So it's going to tell us if the number is closer to 1, it's going to tell us that it's a stronger correlation. If that number is closer to 0, that means that it's a weaker correlation. So for looking at these data points, it looks like the points are tightly squeezed together. Okay, they're really close to that line of best fit. So I would have to predict that this is going to be a strong correlation. So I'm assuming that my correlation coefficient is going to have to be a number really, really close to 1, because it looks like those data points are tightly squeezed close to your line of best fit. Okay, now how do we get the correlation coefficient with the calculator? So the way you're going to get it is first you need to turn on your diagnostic. So to turn on your diagnostic, you're going to go to catalog. It's right above the 0. So since it's in blue, you go to second catalog. You're going to scroll down until you get to diagnostic, and these are in alphabetical order. And it should say diagnostic on. So I'm almost there. There's a diagnostic off and there's a diagnostic on. So notice how there it's on diagnostic on. I'm going to go ahead and push enter. And it says diagnostic on. You want to push enter one more time. It needs to say done. Okay, once your diagnostic is on, now you can ask the calculator for that correlation coefficient. So the way we ask the calculator for the correlation coefficient is you're going to go to Stat. You're going to go to the right side to highlight Calculate. And then you're going to pick number 4, linear regression. And you're going to push enter 5 times. Once you do that, your calculator gives you all this information. Okay, first of all, it gives you an equation for the line of best fit written in slope-intercept form, where your A is your slope and the B is the y-intercept. Okay, now if you look towards the very bottom, you have an R. That is your correlation coefficient. And if you notice, the correlation coefficient the calculator calculated for us was 0.949951, so on and so forth. Okay, notice how it is a positive number. And it should be a positive because our data points were increasing. There was a positive correlation on that scatter plot. If your scatter plot is decreasing, then you should end up with a negative correlation coefficient. Okay, so in this case, it was a positive correlation. And if you notice, 0.949999 is really close to 1. That means that it does have a really, really strong correlation on that scatter plot. So normally I ask my students to round the correlation coefficient to the nearest hundredth. So in this case, since the third number is a 9, we would round it to 0.95 correlation coefficient.